Hey everybody, welcome back. And we're getting into the top four of the winners bracket of the Badass Women of Hearthstone. I'm rebobson. You just heard my voice on the end of the last game there when Cora had to disappear, and I'm joined with one of our competitors who we saw on stream earlier absolutely crush it with her mid-range hunter. Hey Teebs, how are you? How's it going?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks. My name's Teebs, if anyone doesn't know me. And I'm kind of filling in. I'm not usually a caster. It's actually my first time casting. But there was a need for a caster, and I'm happy to help. So
Yep.
I will do my best for all of you.
Yep, and of course, Teebs is a fantastic player, so got some wonderful insight to share with us mere mortals like myself. Well, first things first, Teebs, congrats on your game earlier. That was just brutal, I've got to say. You played it really well.
Thank you.
Before we get started, as one of the competitors, how's this tournament been what's the experience been like for you?
It's been really nice. I've had mixed feelings in the past towards like multi-week events. Normally, 6 to 8 rounds of Swiss played one week after the other. Sometimes you have like format shifts in the middle. A lot of times it's easy to kind of lose interest and have some weeks that are a little slower or whatever. Um, and that hasn't been untrue of this tournament necessarily. We've had some format shifts. We've had a few slower weeks, especially that it's the off season. But overall, I think the tournament's been run really well, and I really like all of the people in this tournament. Um, the women's Hearthstone community is a fantastic place, and I have a lot of great friends who I've made over the last couple years that I've been playing. And it's a great time. So it makes me happy to come back every weekend and keep playing against all of the other great players in this tournament. So I'm a little sad to see that this is going to be the end of it, but hopefully we'll have another one in the future.
Yeah, I think there are very good chances that there will be another one, especially given just how well this one's gone. Obviously, I haven't been a participant for obvious reasons, but I've been pretty involved with it from the start. It's been just amazing to watch this kind of women's Hearthstone community just kind of grow, become stronger, and I'm sure there'll be many more to go. And like you say, yeah, it's sad. Tomorrow is the last day of the Badass Women of Hearthstone, and who knows, Teebs? Maybe you're gonna win it.
Yep. Well, I'd love to because that would also mean I get to play it out right till the very last.
The maximum amount of Badass Women of Hearthstone. That's
Yep.
what we want. But you're going to be playing in the next match we have up on stream against
Future Shock, I think.
Future Shock. That is it. But the match we're going to have up now, we're going to have Pathra again on the stream. We just had her match against Kara Q, where she won 3-1. And she's going to be playing against iOrchestrate. iOrchestrate played her match against Dragon Rider before the day officially started. There were some timing issues, and she beat Dragon Rider 3-2, and what I gather was a very close game. 3-2 games in Last Hero Stand are always so tight.
Right.
So I bet that was a good one. It's a pity we didn't get to see it, but
Yeah, for sure. It also sounds like it would have been really early. I know I barely got up in time for my match. I mean, I had to set phone alarms and then immediately play Hearthstone when I woke up, and that was only, what, 9:40 or so that I woke up? So for them to have played before that, I mean, maybe East Coast isn't so bad, but if you're on Pacific time, finishing a set before 10 a.m., oof,
yeah, that's
accommodations
yeah.
are in order.
I can't imagine playing Hearthstone at like 9 a.m. and not completely making a total hash of it. But
Right.
it seems like they both did pretty well, or maybe they both were just equally tired
Equally
enough.
so.
They evened out. But
Yeah. I mean, that is largely part of the skill set. I think a big part of being a Hearthstone competitor and something that I've grown a lot as a person, in terms of being able to deal with fatigue, being able to deal with time change and travel and jet lag and all of those things. Um, something way off of the normal experience that I did in 2017 was the Rat Race, back when it was a
oh god,
24-hour streamed event down in Santa Ana, and to fly in for that and then have 1 or 2 days to set yourself up to be playing from midnight until midnight Pacific time, 24 straight hours is quite a lot. So definitely a relevant skill set for people to work on.
Yeah, that just sounds horrible. I struggle after like 2 hours. I'm just like, yeah, you know what, I'm done. I'm gonna go do something else. 24, I'd just be like, when does it end? But enough about any of that. We should probably talk a little bit about what these players have brought to this match today. Obviously,
Yeah,
we've
for
already
sure.
seen Patra's lineup. She had the Odd Paladin, the Death Rattle Hunter, the Cloning Gallery Priest, and the Mechathune Warlock. But what we haven't seen is iOrchestrate's lineup. What's she brought, Teebs?
It looks to me like she has a very interesting odd rogue with an elemental package, a blaze collar. Um,
Woo!
cool stuff there. I mean, I guess a few spaces are freed up by the nerf to Cold Blood, and she's gone with what are the elementals? We got a few tar creepers in here, pair of fireflies, of course, and
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's
not a
actually that much
whole
of
lot.
a. Yeah, there's just the one Tar Creeper and two Fireflies, from what I can see.
Yeah, but she feels that's enough to splash a blaze collar, and I'm curious to see how it works out because I mean, that could be quite powerful. However, sometimes you're just going to be playing a 7 mana 6/6. So, curious to see how that does for her. But yeah, an odd rogue variant. We have what looks like a wall priest, which is featuring Master Oakheart and some of the kind of low attack, high health minions, and then a couple topsy turvies, as well as the Inner Fire plus Divine Spirit combo to pump a lot of damage out of whatever left, whatever's left over from Oakheart. Then we have a pretty standard looking Q block, I would say, based on Skull of the Minari. Pair of Mountain Giants in there, Prince, one Faceless. Good stuff. And then finally, looks like we have a Spell Hunter, undeterred by the nerf of both Hunter's Mark and Spellstone, playing 2 copies of each at their new 2 and 6 mana costs, respectively. So, um,
Interesting.
not put off by the buffs, it seems, or the nerfs. Sorry, it seems like playing both Odd Rogue and Hunter.
Yeah. I think I did actually see a tweet from iOrchestrate saying that she intended to change the Wall Priest to Even Paladin, but then just didn't get around to it before the deadline came around. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously she still won, so it didn't make that much of a difference. And interestingly enough, if she had brought the Even Paladin, that would have been 3 nerf decks.
3 out of 4, yeah, that's wild. Um,
No, it's standard.
so yeah, we'll see. It's
Sorry, everyone. I like a terrible joke every now and then.
I appreciate terrible jokes. This might be dangerous. Um,
Excellent.
all right. Well, we'll see how that priest versus paladin potential pays out for her going forward. But in the meantime,
Yeah,
looks like a pretty
yeah,
interesting match we have.
yeah, and we do have some bans in actually. They've just got the
Okay.
bans in, and what we see is actually a double priest ban. So we are not going to be seeing any wall priest. For anyone who's unfamiliar with it, it's an infuriating deck. I think. I don't like playing against it at all because it just never ends.
Mm-hmm.
And Pathra has had her cloning gallery priest banned away, and I'm also quite happy about that, to be honest. It's a horrible deck to cast
Yeah.
because you've got to keep track
I
of a
agree.
lot of stuff.
I
So
can't imagine trying to keep track of Lyra cards. It's hard enough to keep track of your own, much less keeping track of someone else's while paying attention to their opponent.
yeah, it gets even harder when Lyris generates cards that are already in the deck. You're just like, how many Eternal
Right.
Servitudes have been played this game? Like 5. It gets a bit silly. But
Well,
so
those
teams.
bans make me a little happy for my own casted bias then. Interestingly, iOrchestrate's priest deck doing its job.
Yeah. Also
Pulling
teams.
out that ban there, Um,
So based on your
you know,
expert
you can't
opinion,
ask for more than that.
who would you kind of give the edge to? What's your prediction for this match based on the bands, based on the decks? Gonna put you on the spot here.
Well, I think a big factor in this matchup is going to be Patra's Paladin. I feel like it should be pretty favored in all of the matchups. Um, Warlock can get there, but it needs a pretty specific draw. You need Defile, Hellfire, at least one of each generally.
Yeah.
Um,
Or just
Sometimes you can
cube,
kind of cheese out with the weapon.
or just Skull Void Lord. That can
Right,
happen.
right. So it definitely has its tricks, but it's a deck that can struggle against aggro a lot of the time, and Odd Paladin is a very consistent and very aggressive deck. So I would say the Paladin's still favored there. Paladin definitely strong against Hunter with the nerfs, but I don't know if that's enough to quite bring it around. This is a deck that has a lot of secrets that are good against aggressive decks, but it's been significantly nerfed, and I think Spellstone is one of the things that really kind of seals the deal against an aggressive deck where you kind of keep the board tamed with secrets and then get to Spellstone on 5 and lock them out of getting back on board. With that being a turn later, might give a bit of space for Paladin, and then Paladin's definitely strong against Rogue. It's a matchup that
We
is
know that one
you
all
feel
too
like you
well.
almost get there so often with Rogue, and then it just gets away from you with those token generations. So I think Paladin's one to watch for. Um, Patra's Warlock is a deck that I'm familiar with, but I have not played a lot of myself. I'm not sure how its matchups are going to be against Cube. I would imagine it is not great against both Rogue and Hunter. Um,
I think Spell Hunter might just be slow enough that the Warlock can go there, and the kind of Corpse Taker
yeah.
package. I think against the Rogue might just be enough healing for them to really kind of deal with it. They've still got Spell Stones. They've got a lot of
Ankle
store
Biter as
mechanics.
well. Yeah,
So
that was an interesting tech that Heidi used against me that I haven't seen a whole lot of. It seems a relatively recent tech for Warlock, both control and even putting in the Corpse Taker package. Um,
it's a Hearthstone deck.
and it can be
You run
pretty
Corpse Taker.
powerful. Yeah, for sure.
It's,
And then finally we have Hunter, which weak to Rogue should be fine against both of the other decks. So I would give this one to Patra, but not by a ton. And a lot of it, I think, will come down to kind of the queue order and the way that these decks stack up against each other, and
yeah.
then ultimately how well each of the competitors are playing.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen Patch on the scene. iOrchestrate's a player that I'm not too familiar with, but I've been hearing good things about her, so I'm expecting to see some good play from both the players. And I think it is, like you say, it's going to be really important what players queue up in game one.
Mm-hmm.
I think iOrchestrate's going to have to probably hold on to the Q block as like a consistent way of beating the Megathune lock, because I'm not sure about the Rogue. And likewise, I think Patra's going to want to only play the Paladin specifically once that Q block is out of the way. So they kind of got this kind of game of chicken. Who plays that
Right.
deck first?
And it's a lot of kind of one pretty favorable matchup, one fairly even, and one slightly unfavorable. I don't think too many of these matchups are complete blowouts, but each of the aggressive decks can kind of get there in a lot of cases against everything the opponent has. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm really curious to see what the players start with in game one. Because, like you say,
Yeah.
it's quite a big deal
Yeah,
how that
it's-
matchup goes in the first game.
Yep, it's very close. And of course, this is to decide who goes to the winners bracket final, and then you're just one match away, two matches away from winning the entire thing. We're getting to
Right.
the real crux of the competition here, and like I said, just told the players to get started, and once they have both selected their decks and get into it, we will see how things pan out. I'm
Excellent.
excited. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's a big opportunity to win this game and be able to slide through on the winners bracket side of things. Really makes the weekend a lot easier in terms of just sheer number of games played.
oh
And the
yeah,
longer you can stay on top, the more matches you can skip over in the lower bracket.
yep.
And really, if you're playing 2 solid days of Hearthstone, that matters a lot. Having that downtime, having those breaks to eat and just rest and whatever it is that you want to do in your spare time really
Do a
makes a
little
big
dance.
difference.
That's what I do.
Fair.
I think we've all played some of those open cups back when they were double them and they just took literally forever. But enough of that. We are getting into the first game, Teebs, and it's going to
Excellent.
be iOrchestrate on the Q block and Pathra on the Death Rattle Hunter, featuring Amani Warbear, which is, I think, one of my favourite cards at the moment, just because I really like saying Amani Warbear. What's your opinion on this matchup, Teebs?
Um, I
Do you have
think
any strong
Hunter
opinions?
should be in a pretty good spot, save for any sort of Finn shenanigans. Um,
Ooh, now that is an important card that just came into Patra's hand.
Absolutely. I think that takes out one of Warlock's best opportunities.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Kind of just
And it also looks like iOrchestrate just doesn't have the weapon, which in this instance is probably going to be to her benefit because playing the weapon into ooze is such a tempo loss. I mean, there's no armor gain, of course, but having control of the board as Hunter early and then punishing your opponent for taking a 5-minute turn that effectively does nothing while allowing you to develop another minion of your own is just pretty devastating. And of course, as the Warlock, it's a play that you're always going to be happy to make.
yeah,
I think it's actually better for her to not have the weapon here.
yeah. If you spend 5 mana on turn 5, use your entire turn, and then just get the weapon immediately destroyed, you're just so far behind against a deck which sort of thrives on tempo in the way that Death Rattle Hunter does. Orchestrate's
Right.
falling really far behind here.
She is. I mean, she has the opportunity to develop a giant here, which is pretty tempting. I mean, Hellfire also looks pretty nice, but it's one of those situations where she's going to be taking a lot of damage, and it doesn't seem to me like she has what is that 2-drop in the far side? Yeah, no way to taunt these giants in the meantime. And Voidlord is a long ways off, so if she chooses to try to get back on board with giant, this could just be too much damage coming in here from Patra.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of damage coming in. Could even choose to just temp out the flanking strike on the play the beef or go face, or could even, flanking strike into the giant, hitting the defender, Vargas, or the taunt, just so Hellfire is not too much of a punish. Looks like that's what Patra's going for.
Yeah, it's a good spot. I think pushing 4 here is probably pretty safe. She might be worried about
Ooh,
cube plus pact
wow.
on 5 with the coin, which is a reason to clear that giant out, because if you allow a value trade into 2 more giants, you almost certainly lose the game. Um, so perhaps a bit of respect paid to that, but it really hurts as a hunter to be in that position and not be able to sink all that damage in, because your window is early.
Yep, window is closing rapidly if you're Patra, because
Mm-hmm.
she does have Katharina. She does have that huge power spike, but it's still 2 turns away. And when you're facing down
Mm-hmm.
a mountain giant, it can get a little rough.
Interested to see if she opts to go for a cube playdead here. It's a fair bit of board presence, which seems like it might be something that she needs right now, but it's also not a phenomenal use of playdead because it just loses out to pretty much all of the board clear. Um, the file doesn't quite get there, but a Hellfire is quite a blowout here and might be exactly what iOrchestrate needs to stabilize this game.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're Patra though, if you see something like a giant trade into the cube and then a Hellfire, you're really not that happy because then you have Ziliax to clear up the giant, and then you can play Katarina onto a pretty much level board.
That's fair. Interested to see if this Doomsayer ends up coming down. As you said, even though iOrchestrate has the board, if that gets cleared up and Patra manages to stick any minions on this turn, that card may never get another chance to come down. And like you said, Katrina on 8 is exactly what you're trying to set up for. You want to control the board and have your opponent relatively low as this hunter. Jam Cat on 8, and you just kind of get there most of the time. So that seems to be exactly what Patra has set up for herself. I
Yeah.
question a little bit if that Doomsayer would have been value, although it's kind of a risky play when you have a giant on board.
Yeah, well, it's an 8-1. It does die to a considerable number of things. There's a second flanking strike, there's a Ziliax, there's a Rexar. Of course, there's no candle shot anymore, but it's not like the best thing to have on the board. And just resetting with the Doomsayer might just have been a better option for iOrchestrate, but that's with Caster Vision, obviously. We
Right,
can
of
see
course.
these things. iOrchestrate can't necessarily, and was thinking maybe just sinking the 8 damage was important enough. But now
Fair.
she needs to deal with this board because Possessed Lackey is not the most threatening minion.
Right. I mean, it does get a nice trade against Ziliax if that's something that's allowed to happen. But you know, Cat could just pull a bunch of damage out of the deck, and that might not be a recoverable game state, especially if you don't hit a Void Lord out of this
Now the
Lackey, which
question, oh,
oh
it is the Witchwood Grizzly, which I think what Patra was not hoping for.
right,
Really would
least
have liked to
valuable
see,
option, I would say.
really would like to see King Crash come out of there. Or no, there's no Charge Devil Sword in this particular list. But
That's uh that's something that she actually probably the direct cut for the Warbear that we see in her hand,
yeah,
competing over that 7 mana slot, which is a much better card in a lot of matchups, but in this situation, going face when your opponent is at 12. Oh,
and gets the
there it is.
33% on the Void Lord.
Hits the 1 in 3. Void Lord comes down. How do you like our odds for this from this position?
And that's a huge deal. There's a second Void Lord to come down, and there's Cube with Umbra, or just Cube in this turn if you want, which I think I like more. The chances of Umbra Cube ever happening are probably quite slim, so just going for it now seems reasonable.
Yeah, it seems quite strong. Hunter, especially Death Rattle Hunter, is not a deck that's typically known to be running a lot of silences. And Patra, of course, her list is known to iOrchestrate. She's not running any silences inherently in her deck, outside of something that might come out of Deathstalker XR, which is of course not developed. She also is not playing Hunter's Mark from what I can see here, and opted for Prince Kaliseth instead. So going for the cube now gets the minion on board. It's almost always going to trigger. Um, and if they try and develop something big, well, you can put the cube into it as soon as you manage to get through this Witchwood Grizzly. And every Void Lord that comes down from here on out is making this game harder and harder for Patra to win.
Yeah, once the Void Lord train starts with Q Block, it really doesn't stop for a long time. And like this is
Right.
kind of the point in the game where Patra just needs Rexar.
Yeah. And even then, I question whether that's going to be enough. On the benefit of Patra is that her life total is very high. So if she does manage to get Rexar within the next few turns, she does have a lot of time to work with in terms of the value generation there. But we can see here from my Orchestrate's hand that, you know, turn 9, she's got 2 more Void Lords in that cube. She's got another Void Lord in her hand, which she may elect to play right now. And then already sitting on that Death Knight with Gul'dan there, which, you know, that means this curve, if she wants to take it, or whenever she feels like Gul'dan is enough value, is really quickly going to start chopping through Pathra's hand, and card advantage is just going to go further and further over to iOrchestrate. And like you said, I think Rexar is her way back in this game, and it's going to have to be soon.
Yep, but with 14 cards remaining in the deck, that's still quite a slim chance to pick up the Rexar, especially with one of the trackings already gone. And iOrchestrate's going to go for the Defile, clears off the Amani Warbear, clears off the Grizzly with a Spellstone, and could consider playing the Doomsayer here. But no.
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, on one hand, you do set yourself up for Gul'dan down the road because, once these die, you just get them back. But by leaving them up, you kind of force your opponent to trade cards for them. Patra's not winning in this situation by doing nothing, although more time is to her benefit towards drawing the Death Knight. But it looks to me like the onus is on Patra to get things done here. And so I think iOrchestrate getting not necessarily value out of her cards, but forcing Patra to spend her remaining resources to do her best to get through, and then getting even more value out of Gul'dan should be enough to win this game for her, I would think.
Yeah, so Patra's got this kind of interesting decision now with this Undasta. She has King Crush in hand, but with so few cards, pulling the King Crush, and then if there was any kind of board clear, like Godfrey, Hellfire, Spellstone, anything like that, Patra would just be completely out of gas.
Right, and this is that classic situation of you have very few resources left. Is it safe to commit them all at the same time? Is it too much of a risk to put everything on the board? And Patra feels like, yes, it is too much of a risk. King Crush only gets in and clears a 1/3 if it's summoned this turn. And like you said, iOrchestrate has a number of potential methods of clearing out most of this board at the same time, which would leave Patra with pretty much nothing other than her top decks. I mean, this Firefly and Gluttonous Ooze are not going to get her anywhere. Interested to see how long she might opt to keep that Ooze in hand. Discarding cards to play Doom Guards is something that is potentially worth saving the minion to force out. If they never get the weapon, they can't play them unless they pull them from deck. There's some merit to that, but at the same time, she has nothing else going. So one or two more turns of doing nothing, and the game is going to be totally away from her. I don't know how much an Ooze is going to help that situation.
Speak of the devil.
At this point.
Yeah, I think iOrchestrate would be very happy to just not play Doom Guards this game, to be honest.
Right. She seems to be doing just fine without them.
Yeah, because remember Teebs when iOrchestrate was way down at 12 health, was facing down a Catherine on 8? That was a long time ago.
Right, it was. How quickly this game has changed in the few turns since getting to maximum mana and the Warlock just leveraging this card advantage.
King Crush.
Patra unfortunately has not done a lot of the kind of big death rattle tricks that this deck is designed for. It hasn't had a particularly poor draw by any means, but it hasn't really generated that quick mid-game value that you need to get across the finish line in this matchup. And it's not quite over yet, but I can't really see Patrick getting there other than a near immediate answer into what at this point would have to be a pretty insane run of Beast.
I think it's got to be the Bat Poisonous at this point, and 2 Void Lords come out from the Gul'dan. Pretty happy to see that if you are iOrchestrate. And look at this hand from Patra. It's just terrible.
Not a lot going on.
Literally nothing going on. iOrchestrate's back up to 29. The hero power from Gul'dan gonna go up to 32, and she can just do whatever she wants. But Patra is still holding onto the use. The most important thing. There's the use. If the skull comes down, Patra can get some tempo, but I have a feeling tempo might just be lost.
I think we're a little past that point now, and unfortunately with the Gul'dan, the Ooze as a tempo minion is largely useless, especially if it's not accompanied by a pretty substantial board of other juicy targets.
Well,
Rolls the 5 out of 7 in favor of iOrchestrate, quite likely to go that way. But potentially, a way back in for Pathra would have been killing a big minion and forcing only one of the 3 death rattles to spawn. But no high roll here. And I feel like the window for Rexstar draw is a turn.
yeah, we're past the point where Rexar can probably win the game, and it's still not there. Regardless, none of these are particularly fantastic at this point. Tar Creeper just bad. Cube is pretty bad when you have no minions on the board, and Grizzly is just a 3/6 which dies to a hero power and a Void Lord attack, or a Possessed Lackey attack which pulls a Doomguard.
Exactly. Based on what we know, we guarantee a 5/7 out of this Lackey trade. And that's something that's probably likely to happen now. Also the option for a Umbra Tal'Daram to pull the other Doomguard first. Not something that was elected to happen here, but...
And you see the skull come down.
I think we're kind of past the point of Pathra gets the moral high ground.
Yep, so from what Patrick can see, the flanking strike on the 1/2 does technically keep her alive, because it's 5, 8, 11. No, by playing flanking strike on the Void Lord, there is just lethal on board now. Patrick just wants this game to end.
The hero power gets there, and this didn't quite work out for Hunter. A little bit too slow of a start, and I think perhaps investing in a rather large board early with Defender of Argus and cubing 3/3s, which ultimately allowed a Hellfire to completely dismantle her early aggression, allowed iOrchestrate to get back there. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those decks where you love to get the value out of eggs and all of those big minion death rattles when you can, but you don't always get that choice.
Yeah, I mean,
Pathra did the best with the cards that she was dealt, and it wasn't quite enough to get there.
Yeah, I think the cube playdead was probably the correct play, because I think Patra's option at that point was either do that or just don't do anything.
Right.
And you don't really... And it did set up that really nice Ziliax into Katharina play, which a lot of the time does just get you there. If Katharina had pulled that King Crush, very different story, because then hero powers over the top might just have got her there. As it was a Grizzly, it kind of just gave iOrchestrate that time she needed to just gradually edge back into the game.
Right, and at that point, iOrchestrate didn't really have a lot of pressure on her threatening the 3/9s, whereas something like the King Crush could have dismantled that board a lot faster and potentially allowed Pathra to get through for a bit more damage, not to mention the obvious benefit of just immediately dealing that damage to face in the turn that it would have been summoned. So
8 to face when your opponent's at something like 12 is pretty good. And Teebs, we're getting into the very match we were talking about right at the start. It's the Odd Paladin versus the Cube Log. I think both these players' most important decks. So I think it really is going to come down to this match, this game.
And this is one that I feel like the Paladin has pretty good time in, and it's really up to the Warlock to get the right tools to punish them for playing such flimsy and wide board states when cards like Hellfire and Defile really clear out almost anything the Paladin can get going. However, we don't see either of those cards in iOrchestrate's hand. It does have a few early game minions to play on curve. Beetle is very nice here. Even dropping Umbra on turn 4, not a terrible option. Obviously, it's not a removal spell, but it's something. A little curious to see that elected to tap rather than play Beetle, but perhaps she just prefers searching for an early Doomguard or removal spell, and looks like it pays off here.
Yeah, I think I agree with iOrchestrate's life tap there. I think it's just so, like you say, it's so important to have Defile, particularly. Like, if you don't, then you're in such a bad spot that you're not, like, you won't ever really win by just tempering out a Beetle, which kills a few 1/1s. Like, you need to get that big swing turn where you Defile, then play a Doomsayer, then play Possess Lackey, then manage to kill it on the following turn, cube it, something like that. You can't really play fair against Odd Paladin.
This is a pretty ideal situation, perhaps even better than what you were just describing. And iOrchestrate off the back of that board clear forces Pathra play nothing on turn 3. Couldn't have the damage to kill Doomsayer, and then picks up a Hellfire at the same time. We may have turned the corner in this situation.
Yeah, not a bad spot to be in. Can follow this up with Ziliax, which is just always good against aggro.
Yeah, one of the cards that really, I mean, she's taken just enough life to essentially get healed back to full, and forcing a board state to kind of smash itself into Ziliax is doing all the things you don't want. Your opponent's getting healthy again. You're losing the board that you've worked so hard to generate over the early turns. I think iOrchestrate's found herself in a pretty good position here, and really trying to figure out where she wants to take this turn, having tons of options. Developing a giant, not terrible. Hellfire, pretty safe. That is her only removal spell at this point that goes wide. So perhaps a little bit dangerous to use that there, but
Yeah.
Definitely clearing out the board going into a Fungalmancer turn is always a strong option.
Yeah, it does feel really bad using a Hellfire when you see your opponent has 8 cards in hand.
Right.
Because they're just going to refill. Yeah, they're going to refill instantly. And what I'm really looking at from Pathra is this Frostwolf Warlord that is in their hand. Because there's no Siphon Soul in Q block, there's no Voodoo Dolls, there's no single target removal except for Spellstones. So if you get that Frostwolf Warlord big enough, as Odd Paladin does very easily, it can be really hard for them to deal with.
Right. And iOrchestrate may have the best option of trying to get out in front of the Warlord by playing a Giant here before it comes down. But as we can see now, a Warlord next turn without any sort of a board clear, the Warlord's actually going to be much larger than the Giant. In this case, potentially a 10-10.
Yeah. It's terrifying just how easily Odd Paladin can make 10-10s.
Right.
Like, it just makes you think, why didn't they ever play Frostwolf Warlord before? It's nuts.
It has done quite well. It'd be interesting to know how this card would have performed in the previous meta. I'm sure it was something that people were considering at very least back then. But yeah, now making 10-10s seems to be what people want. And
making 10-10s is always what people want. Who doesn't want to make a 10-10?
I think Pathra might just go for it here, and I don't blame her. It's quite a play.
Especially with the Righteous Protector on the board.
Right, it makes it really hard for this Giant to connect for something like Ziliax, and unless exactly Defile is picked up, I think it's going to be very hard for iOrchestrate to get through this board without just dying almost immediately.
Dying almost immediately is just not fun.
Not what you want, definitely not. Curious to see if the Blessing of Might goes down on the Divine Shield here. And looks like yes is the answer. So from this stage, I am gonna say that unless iOrchestrate draws exactly Defile off the top, this game is very low. And here we
Literally, Teebs, the moment you said the word Defile, the card appeared on the screen.
I'm sorry, Patrick.
Oh, and I really like Faceless Manipulator on the 10-10 and Defile.
Right. Pretty good way to spend your other 5 mana.
Of course, it's still exactly the same now. Defile would have done the same amount of damage anyway, so there's no kind of punish for bad order.
And Wow, how quickly that game turned around. And that's just the power of Defile in this matchup. And
Defile
I
is
think a lot of these cards perhaps came down to iOrchestrate tapping on turn 2 and getting that extra value.
yeah, that card advantage has done so much for Orchestrate, and now she's coming into one turn away from turn 9. And as Odd Paladin, you don't want the Q block to get to turn 9, because that's when things go horribly wrong.
And as soon as Voidlord slams down on the table, which is pretty much an auto play on turn 9, we see it looks like an entirely silence-free deck. There are no sources of silence.
Yeah, Iron Begal, not really a card which we see a great deal. iOrchestrate has actually the really good play this turn of Ziliax, Prince Taldaram on the Ziliax.
Oh, I love it. That is almost certainly going to get her out of range of anything that Pathra can pull out here. Next turn.
Oh, I love this.
Heal her up. Stop the damage from getting through.
Oh, actually go for the Magnetized. Oh, no, it doesn't work like that. I wasn't actually sure if it did or not, but that's just so much healing. And it's actually just
more healing ultimately that's going to be required or going to be granted here as these minions get taken down.
Yeah, one of the Zilexes can't even die, and this is just one-off lethal.
Pathra does have the option to play Raid Leader here, or Fungalmancer, or perhaps both. I think Raid Leader perhaps the stronger option though.
I think I like the...
Dies.
Oh, Sunkeeper Terran. Always a fantastic pick, but I think I like the... I think I liked the Hero Power Stonehill Raid Leader option, just because it blocks, it creates this taunt for the iOrchestrate has to attack through. But
I agree.
Ooh.
And especially with the Taran picked up, going a little wider seems like extra value for having potentially tokens that remain on the board and turn into 3/3s. But Pathra feels like perhaps the Raid Leader is better suited in a turn where she gets to send some damage face. I'm not exactly sure what her reasoning is for that one, but elected to keep it and go for the Fungalmancer instead.
Yeah, but I'd say you could view Fungalmancer in exactly the same way if you... Oh. Now that's a good turn.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit awkward with the way kind of Vine Cleaver pans out. You're guaranteed to not get some value either way. But
I think
the fact you can go
hero power first is almost always in order, and the question of the Vine Cleaver is a very interesting one. Pathra looks like electing to swing afterwards, which means the minions generated from Vine Cleaver will remain 1/1s. Had she swung out first, though, she would have ended up with weapon just being wasted and taking 3 damage. She might opt to keep the weapon entirely here, which is an interesting middle ground choice.
We were just talking about how Pathra was almost dead. How did this happen?
Yeah.
Sunkeeper Tarot has just completely turned this game around, which is, I think we can see why Stonehill Defender is run in this deck, because sometimes you just do this.
This is exactly the payout card for Stonehill. Pathra gets it perhaps when she needs it most, and is quite back in this game. We do see what looks to be a 50-50 Demon Summon.
Yeah, it is a 50-50.
Now, if she elects to Umbra first, we are certainly going to get both by the time this Lackey dies.
And what's in the box? It's the Void Lord. We get some more Void Gallers as well. Void Walkers, sorry.
Couple bonus 1/3s thrown on top. What a turn for 10 mana that was.
Like, this entire game so far has just been both players doing absolutely disgusting things.
Yes.
Just backwards and forwards, and I've got to say, when both players are doing the disgusting things, I think you still have to give it to the Q block, because it's a deck made to just do terrible, terrible things.
I agree. And I think Patra's window is very quickly closing again, and you could argue that it's been it's been gone for a little while, and we're just kind of
No,
going through the motions.
but it
Some
just
life was definitely breathed back in with his divine favor and Sunkeeper Tarm combo, but I just am not
ooh,
sure it's gonna be enough. That's somehow
what's going on,
she's
Teebs?
trying.
Yeah, she's trying, and she's doing a pretty good job of when it comes to trying, but I don't know if it's just quite enough, because we can see that the Possessed Lackey is going to pull a Doom card, and then there is the Cube Pact, and that's almost definitely going to be lethal on the following turn, with no
Yep.
taunts besides the Sunkeeper Tarim. Pretty rough.
Curious to see what her priority is on this
Oh,
weapon.
that is unfortunate for iOrchestrate. Picks up the second Doom Guard, so now there are no demons left in the deck.
Well, it may not be all that bad
Well,
because
it's not terrible,
it looks like
but
lethal actually. If she pops into Tarim, Spellstones, she has 6 on board, and a Doomguard should be lethal damage.
ah,
As long as she spots this one.
ladies and gentlemen, that is why
Looks like she
Teebs is here,
does.
to help me through these really difficult calculations like 3 plus 2 plus 1 plus 5 equals 11. Yep, sometimes it's hard. And Teebs, this is what we're getting into for game 3 is the one that we said we did not think was very good for Pathra.
Right.
Mechathune Warlock versus Cube Warlock. I have absolutely no familiarity with this matchup, but I've got to assume it's pretty bad. There's only Godfrey in terms of wide and tall board removal. If you can't, and Cube Lock goes very wide and very tall very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
There's no weapon removal to deal with Skull, should that be an issue. And iOrchestrate's been very bad at drawing Skull.
Yes.
It's just
In
not happened
fact,
for
it hit the board for half a turn.
through the course of 2 games.
2 games.
But she's been winning without it, so
Right.
who needs it?
You know, credit where credit's due. This deck looking to be quite potent in the current meta. And we'll see how Patra's Mechathune Warlock manages to match up. And I share some of your same concerns that you just raised. Godfrey being the only super potent board removal, not opting to run any of the other Warlock removal tools in favor of kind of a faster and more streamlined deck. And also a lot of interesting anti-aggro tools that might be great in a matchup like Odd Rogue, but is not going to offer her very much insulation against the minions that are going to be summoned by Warlock here. Things like Wax Elemental, the 1-mana 0/1 taunt with Divine Shield. Even Corpse Taker really doesn't stand in the way of the uh, minions of this deck very well.
Yeah, Patra just needs to rapid cycle is, I think, name of the game here.
Absolutely. Turboing through the deck, and she drew Blood Mage, which is helpful. Perhaps opting to Tar Creeper here so that she can play both Blood Mage and Hero Power next turn. And the early stages of this game for both players is largely going to be around drawing cards, getting to their consistent mid-game threats in the case of the Cube Warlock, and getting through Cycle to assemble the combo in Patra's case. And she is pretty obligated to draw through her whole deck.
Yeah, which is why she's actually
Interesting
went for
matchup.
the life tap instead of playing that Tar Creeper, which she was hovering over for a considerable amount of time there.
Yeah. Potential concern for Patra is life tapping too much early can lead her to hand space issues, which is potentially something that she's run herself into now, where life tap Blood Mage would overdraw her if iOrchestrate killed the Blood Mage, and we can see she already has a minion on board. So forced to go with the Tar Creeper now. Perhaps a bit of a gamble that was punished, based on the fact that iOrchestrate played a minion.
Yeah. iOrchestrate's hand is just not what she wants in this matchup. If she had this hand in the last game, she would have been over the moon. Double Hellfire, Ziliax, Defile. Perfect.
Tools you want against Odd Paladin, but unfortunately for her, this is a very slow and not threatening hand, which is exactly what Pathra wants to see in this matchup. If she is allowed enough time to cycle through her deck, I think that she probably can find a way to squeeze out a win here. A lot of the cards, actually, this Doomsayer. Wow.
Like we say from Pathra, speed cycle. And
very cool play there, opting to ping herself in the face into the damage back in order to power both her spellstones.
So I was just about to talk about one really important card in Pathra's hand is this single copy of Voodoo Doll. Because there's no other single target removal in deck for something exactly like a early Mountain Giant. They're actually going to opt to not even play it this turn, instead going for the second cheaty Ankle Biter to power up those Spellstones again, because now Thalmos, double upgraded Spellstone, just kills a Giant.
Kills a Giant, and 8 is exactly the threshold that you need, and Patra's found a way to hit that. And I imagine that's why she prioritized keeping the Blood Mage early.
Ooh. And I also had the option
of two activators at the time she elected to keep it, but she may well have been hoping to get there, and felt that she needed the value out of these spellstones. Ultimately, she doesn't have to lock in this first one for 8, which enables her to keep the Blood Mage for a future turn, and maybe go with a life tap or a librarian draw this turn. She is getting quite low at this point.
How about a librarian and a life tap?
Why not? Go for everything. Order doesn't matter because you already have both your spellstones.
Yep, and on the previous turn, iOrchestrate did have the option of trading in the Giant and then coining the cube with Faceless Manipulator in hand. And I gotta say, I wonder if that might have served iOrchestrate a little better. Because obviously there's no silence in this deck from Pathra, and there's no way of really...
looking over Patra's list, nothing to punish.
Yeah, so I think the cube, then Faceless Dark Pact would have been just an overwhelming amount of pressure from iOrchestrate, and Pathra just wouldn't have been able to deal with it. Then the Voodoo Doll would just have been useless.
Right, and Cataclysm is not something that she can play and still expect to find a win with.
No.
There's only one copy, and it is essential to her win condition.
Yeah,
So not a removal spell in this case.
Yeah. Cataclysm is basically not a card in the deck. Mechatherian Warlock essentially is a 25 card deck with a 5 card win condition, and you can't use those 5 cards in any other way.
Right. I mean, if you're dead on board, perhaps Cataclysm looks like it's something that saves you, but you'll
still lose.
Never win the game from there.
Especially if you don't run something like Gul'dan.
Right.
Void Lords. You just have no alternate win condition.
We can see Pathra has elected to cut all of the defensive value-oriented tools.
Yeah, and
iOrchestrate threatens out the Umbra. We can see she does have some potential plays out of this. With Void Lord, getting the extra 1/3 is not super relevant in this matchup, but every little bit of pressure does help. Especially as Patra's life total starts to dip a little bit low here. Interested to see if she elects to Spellstone here.
Umbra is a scary card. But that is a lot of damage you're throwing away if you do use this Spellstone, but Patra feels it's a risk she has to take as if there was something like a possessed lackey pulling a Doom Guard, that would just be something Patra could not really deal with.
Yeah,
Void
definitely.
Lord's a lot more manageable, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's a lot slower of a pressure clock, but it's something that's much harder to remove, although Petra is largely out of removal, with the exception, of course, of that one copy of Voodoo Doll, which doesn't quite do the job you would hope for. Also, going into turn 10 when slamming Gul'dan is probably a play that iOrchestrate would make regardless, just to get the hero power online. Uh,
So many
Playing it and clearing this off right
possibilities.
before that, not a lot of value. A little bit slow. I wouldn't be too surprised to see just a Glacial Shard here, to buy some time,
Yeah, we
but
could play something
quite a
like,
few options.
it actually is going for the Voodoo Doll, which, like you say, is pretty unusual going into the Gul'dan turn. But I
She
think this is
may
to set
still
up
elect
the
to
Acolyte
reason.
Defile is a classic Mecha'thun Warlock play, which they
Right.
always seem to manage to do consistently in every game they play against me. But I think not going for it now at this point is a little bit weird. I think you
You
should
might
do
have
a...
run into hand size issues and not wanted to play other cards. Also, by leaving these 1/2s on the board, Patra might feel like she can get Acolyte draw anyways.
Potentially.
Opts to not play it at all. And I think getting this Wax Elemental down is just Patra trying to get cards out of her hand so that she can ultimately make that 3-card Defile draw play that you're talking about. And she has just one combo piece left to draw and only 8 cards left in the deck.
And of course
So as soon as
one...
she gets through that,
Yeah, and of course one of
might
those
be
cards is Solarium, which can just be played to burn 3 cards essentially once all combo pieces have been drawn. With the combo piece in question being Blood Bloom, of course. But iOrchestrate has the Skull Up, there's no weapon removal. If iOrchestrate draws one of those Doom Guards with Faceless Cube double packed in hand, it's going to get
could
rough.
just be it. Mm-hmm.
So I think iOrchestrate's going to be just tapping furiously to try and find a Doom Guard before this match ends.
One danger here with the Solarium is, I believe if she uses
Oh.
it to pick up her Blood Bloom, it would actually cost her the game.
Yep.
You can't Solarium Blood Bloom Mecha'thun in the same turn, but now that she's picked up Blood Blooms first, she has free reign to cast Solarium and gladly just pull all those cards right out of the deck.
And
this looks like she has found herself in a position to get through the entire deck as of her next draw phase.
so yeah, next turn it's game over. So Wax Elemental, Glacial Shard, even a Dark Pact if you really want to get some more health.
Why not go all out? Even Dark Pacting the Acolyte would potentially set her 1 damage fatigue less. Not likely to be super relevant. I don't think there's a world in which you kill the Acolyte and get through for all
And
the
it was
damage.
the next card.
1 draw too late.
One draw too late, and iOrchestrate had the...
What I can see, this is a Patra W.
Yep. Patra
This is a
avoids
turn
the sweep.
And I don't think iOrchestrate has anything to do about it.
No, there's no way of doing 22 damage through a Divine Shield Taunt minion in a single turn, unfortunately, for iOrchestrate. Well, no, there would be if Doomguard had been pulled from the skull, but as it is, no dice.
And
Patra is...
here we go. Mecha'thun, Blood Bloom, Cataclysm. And that's game.
Indeed it is.
So Patra takes it back, puts herself in a 1-2 position, and still has to deal with Odd Rogue, which I am a little bit worried about. She does have a fair number of anti-aggro techs in her deck. Hunter might be a bit more reasonable of a matchup, but that's also a pretty potent deck that can do a fair amount of damage between the hero power, early animal companions, kill commands. There are quite a few damage tools. However, a lot of the secrets are almost entirely useless against this Warlock deck.
Yep,
So
completely
interested
useless.
to see where the rest of the series goes. I would be expecting iOrchestrate to go with Odd Rogue first to try and close this out as a 3-1, just because I feel like it's the better matchup of the two for her. But we'll see
I
where
think
she
I'd agree with
takes
you
it.
there. Odrogue just has the ability to kind of just slam your opponent in the face before they can really do anything. And if Pathra doesn't pick up things like Corpse Taker or Ziliax, then the healing's just not really there. So we are getting into game number 4 right now. iOrchestrate is 2-1 up against Pathra, and like you said, Teebs, it's the Odd Rogue for iOrchestrate and the Mechithuid Warlock for Pathra. And there is a Flappy Bird.
Flappy Bird. Well, the interesting thing in this matchup is that unlike a lot of combo decks that can just sort of use their combo pieces more liberally to survive and kind of run the rogue out of cards and win anyways, even against aggressive decks, this deck doesn't really have the opportunity to do that. Forcing your opponent to reach 0 life when you have an upper end of 2 Corpse Takers, a Ziliax, Godfrey, and a 10 mana 10/10 Mechithune.
Sometimes you just play a
It's
10 mana
really
10/10.
not what's going to get you there.
No.
There's potentially a world in which that happens, but it looks to me like Pathra is going to have to get through all of these cards in iOrchestrate's deck the hard way, somehow stabilize her life total, and still manage to get all of her combo pieces. And this Flappy Bird is potentially a real threat.
Flappy Bird is always a very real threat. If that goes on the board and you don't kill it, there's a good chance you just die. Now, what do you think here? The weapon or the mole? iOrchestrate's just valuing that extra damage this turn, as she knows that she's probably gonna dagger Deadly Poison Southsea Deckhand on the following turn. And now Pathra might be thinking she's safe with this Dark Reaper. We can see that she is not.
I mean, it feels pretty good to play Dark Reaper onto the board against Flappy Bird because it often can force the trade. However, even if iOrchestrate doesn't have it clear, Dark Reaper can't challenge the Flappy Bird on Patra's own turn. So she can't feel too amazing about this in the short term. However, she does have a pretty reasonable follow-up clear, even if this doesn't work out. And she could even elect to Voodoo Doll Coin Mortal Coil now. Making the greedy play with Dark Reaper and doing this next turn potentially gets her extra value, but there also aren't a ton of removal cards that this is better against.
But
I
what
think
a
this
draw.
is pretty safe going for this now, and then picking up Corpse Taker. Yeah, as you said, this is kind of what you want, as long as she doesn't draw her other cheeky ankle biter at the top this turn.
But there's still Ziliax in the deck though, so this is always going to be a Divine Shield, Taunt, Lifesteal.
And there are also the Wax Elementals giving... Interesting. Looks like she might elect to go for cheeky ankle biter on the 2/1 rather than playing the Corpse Taker right now.
Yeah, I mean, just to play around the possibility of the Fungal Monster.
Fungal, yeah. So, pretty conservative play by Pathra, and it works out for her here.
Face.
Even not electing to kill the 2/1.
Interesting.
Except for Defile off the back of that. Can't Defile and Corpse Taker this turn, but could go for Dark Reaper.
Defile, clear a board, play a Dark Reaper, because Dark Reaper does need something on the board to deal with it.
Right. It looks like she might elect not to play the Defile here, and perhaps is afraid of a refill from iOrchestrate, which we in this situation can see that she doesn't particularly have. quite a slow hand. But not immediately challenged by this board state. Unless iOrchestrate can pick up
Ooh.
some damage, it's a slightly awkward spirit, and what a draw.
We see it! The Blaze Caller on the next turn is going to be active with this Firefly.
Yeah. Firefly doesn't do much for her right now. Still gonna have to weapon up, go through this the hard way with the Dire Maul, allow the 1-2 trade back in. But
What it is going to allow, though, is some healing to be denied from this Corpse Taker.
next
As well as
turn,
just playing a 6/6.
Yep. And we can see that Bellstone in Patra's hand, but it's not upgraded at all.
Yep, it's just a 3 damage spellstone. So this could be the Acolyte Defile turn.
Yeah.
For Pathra, draw some more cards. Potentially you pick up something like a Kobold Librarian to play alongside it, or a Wax Elemental.
Kobold Librarian, I think, might just be the perfect card to draw in this situation.
Oh, absolutely.
You can play this turn that does hit the board.
Well, playing the
Opting
Dark
to
Pact
for
first.
life gain instead. An option that she wouldn't have had if she defiled first. This also takes Wax Elemental and Librarian options.
I did pick up the Librarian, but I imagine we're going to see from iOrchestrate Blaze Caller to the face. No doubt, especially with the pickup of Myra's Unstable Element. That is a huge draw for iOrchestrate, as she can just play everything in her hand now. Like next turn could even just be Dagger, Deadly Poison, Leroy to face.
Interesting draw with the Glacial Shard. So Patrick can either elect to Librarian here before Spellstone and power that all the way up to 7 and get the full clear and go back up to 18, which is quite a nice play. Or she can try and get the Corpse Taker online, freeze this Elemental out, and wait another turn, potentially gaining some life out of the Corpse Taker in the meantime.
Yeah, I think I like using the Spellstone here, and then you have the option to freeze iOrchestrate's face. Or play a Wax Elemental. Wax Elemental is a fantastic card against Odd Rogue. It's really difficult for them to deal with.
A lot of pretty good options for Patra here. I think...
But this is a really big dagger if iOrchestrate wants it.
Yeah, especially with that Deadly Poison waiting for your turn, perhaps. A little curious to see if it would have been worth playing it right now, given that she may want to play Baku next turn? But
I kind of like just making a 5/3 weapon.
Yeah. A lot of pressure.
Especially with Myra, like, because then you can go Baku following turn, Leroy, Myra's on the following turn. Just kind of dump everything in your hand, get maximum value from Myra's, and just push as much damage as possible. But
she may feel like the weapon is slated to go into the 0-2 anyways, and so having the extra damage in there now, maybe not even worth playing, and ultimately worth saving for later. I do like your point about Leroy plus Unstable Element, though, getting that extra card draw. Freeze to the face here. Pretty nice as well. It's going to allow Pathra's life gain to connect an extra time here, at least one more time.
Yep, and just more and more life gain. Like, Patra's Ziliax has just stayed resolutely in the deck.
There's the last Galvanizer. And only 7 cards left in the deck. It's always amazing to me when you reach this stage in the game.
They just draw so
the combo
fast.
gets picked up, and there's 7 to 18 cards in the differential for these two players.
And Patra is so far ahead on the board against Odd Rogue, which is quite incredible. And
Not something that you normally see happening, but I think iOrchestrate's hand has been quite heavy, and she didn't quite have the damage to push through with that Leroy, and she's now drawing a lot of the cards she would have wanted in the 3 or 4 turns prior to this.
Yeah, and so what I think this really came down to was Patra acknowledged the risk the Vicious Fledgling presented, and took like quite an unnatural play with the coin Mortal Coil on the Voodoo doll, because that just went so far towards getting Pathra to this position. As iOrchestrate didn't draw those power 3 drops, the Hench Clan Thugs, which are now finally in hand. And just gonna have
Be
to...
able to kill one of these. Yeah,
And-
she's picked up a lot of her mid-game cards just now off of the Myras, and it seems like it may be too late. But
So-
it's by no means over. 7 cards is a small number, but it's still 7 cards.
Absolutely. And iOrchestrate chose
Valerian
to throw the deadly
is
poison now.
online.
There is no Cataclysm in hand, so Patrick cannot afford to play Solarium
Right.
just yet.
Draw that first. So 1 card left to go.
Yeah, both Galvanizers have been played, Blood Bloom and Mechatheuda in hand. She is just waiting on the Cataclysm, but there is a lot of draw happening, and
Pretty.
Lord Godfrey is a really good pickup at this stage of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because iOrchestrate's very likely to go quite wide on the following turn, and Lord Godfrey is going to deal with all of that in one go.
Right. Anytime your opponent plays Myras, you can expect the next turn or two that they're going to go quite wide, often with kind of 3 and 4 health minions, as this deck is known for. Being able to sweep all those up might just be what Pathra needs to close this game out. And I think a lot of this timing window that iOrchestrate has left is going to come down to how deep is that Cataclysm. If she draws it off the top, she can safely Solarium next turn and then just win the game on the following turn.
Yeah, because
But
Pathra
if
is
it's
on...
down there.
Patra's on 24 health with 5 healing currently on the board. She can go up to 29 next turn if something's not done about at least this Corpse Taker, maybe with a BAWOH Spine. And it was really interesting that iOrchestrate chose to play the Deadly
Void
Poison on the previous turn. She could have done something like Deadly Poison, BAWOH Spine, SI7 Agent on this turn, which would have dealt with all of the healing present on the board.
Yeah.
Ziliax, more
ankle
healing.
biter into 1/2. Oh, Ziliax extra insurance. I think this affords her a life tap as well, which means that she will have just 2 cards left. Ultimately, doesn't change her clock though. I don't think.
It does if she picks up Cataclysm. Because then she can guarantee a win on the following
If she taps
turn.
into Cataclysm now, you're right. Then she can Solarium this turn and 100% go off next turn. The 1 and 3 seems worth it. Life total is high enough that
I think it absolutely does. This is just a very nice Defile. Pathra wants to take it. And when you can play Defile, Ziliax, Wax Elemental, when you've already seen a Vile Spine Slayer, just 2 Divine Shield minions against an Odd Rogue is pretty nuts. And Patra is actually quite close to just killing iOrchestrate with just damage.
it's a fair point. Something that we said was unlikely
She's down to
ever happen.
9, and she's taking 3 of Fatigue next turn.
When you play Myras, you start taking that damage real fast. And
Yep.
looks like Iron Beak Owl is in the list of iOrchestrate, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
quite an interesting list. There is one copy of this Snapjaw Shell Fighter that we can see. There's one copy of the Blaze Core, as you mentioned. I think there's one copy of Tar Creeper, one copy of Iron Beak Owl, quite a few singletons. She's obviously
Yeah.
dabbled with the decks a bit since the nerf to Coldblood, and Orchestrate is at least fending off lethal for the time being. But Lord Godfrey is going to have some words.
Prevent some of the life gain as well. There's the Cataclysm picked up, which not particularly relevant at this point, whether it was this turn or last turn. Lord Godfrey will blow this entire board up, and iOrchestrate will be left with a 5 attack weapon and a Leroy. Pathra
Which
at
would-
20.
Yeah, so that would put Pathra at 9, which is not the 4 damage cutoff you need to put a Mechathorn Warlock at to prevent that combo. If they are at 4 health, it is not possible to play Blood Bloom Cataclysm. It just prevents you from doing it. So
even force the draw. It is
yeah, no,
a win, essentially.
yeah,
Or it's 0.
yeah, it's a guaranteed win if you have them at 4 health and they can't heal because they can't do anything at that point, except play a 8 mana 10/10, at which point you probably win. But this seems like it's very much a winning play from Pathra. She can play Godfrey on this turn. She's guaranteed to draw her final card next turn, and unless iOrchestrate can deal 16 damage this turn, which we can see she can't, it's going to be a win. And iOrchestrate knows that, and
What a game.
it's 2-2. We thought this was going to be a very quick sweep, Teebs, but we were wrong.
I mean, this deck is showing its power, and I think Pathra well researched this lineup. We spoke a little bit before the games over the last few days once the nerfs went live about some prep, and we actually intended to practice together, but couldn't quite line up our schedules, but ended up coming up with fairly similar lineups anyways.
Yeah, both you
This
both come.
Warlock was the biggest difference
Yeah,
in this case, and I think it's really paying off for her here.
Yeah, you both brought Cloning Gallery Priest and Odd Paladin, didn't you? And then just varied on the Hunter, and
She
then
has a different Hunter list than I do, a little bit more a slower death rattle list. I opted to play mid-range Hunter, and then her final deck is the Warlock, which might be what gets her there if this game is something she manages to win.
Yeah, it's everything to play for now. It is game 5, it's the decider, and it's of course iOrchestrate's Spell Hunter versus Pathra's Mechathune Warlock, which we've seen win 2 games on the bounce already. And iOrchestrate really needs cards like Animal Companion and To My Side more than anything else. I'm not so sure about this decision to have kept the secret plan, in fact. I just don't think secrets are what's going to get iOrchestrate there.
Especially with, well, some of the defensive minions line up well, but if she can manage to tracking into a Spellstone, there are actually no Hellfires in Patra's list. So Spellstone, even one turn later than it used to be, coming down on turn 6, could potentially represent enough of a threat to put her in a good spot to get through for damage. The thing here is this Hunter deck really has to get going. You need a lot of pressure, and it can't generally do a ton of burst damage without setup. So if you're getting late into the game where Godfrey can come down with some mana expenditure alongside it for 1 health minion, it's pretty much going to clear any board the Hunter can put through. So I think perhaps the idea of putting... Interesting to play this secret before looking for a Spellstone. I was expecting this.
I was expecting the tracking there as well. And I'm also quite surprised to see the cheaty Ankle Biter played this turn, because as you mentioned quite correctly, this deck does not run Hellfire, which is obviously Warlock's main way of dealing with Spellstone, but this deck does run a really good answer to Spellstone, which is cheaty Ankle Biter, Defile. You use the cheaty Ankle Biter to put 1 wolf at 2, then you have a 1, 2, 3 for a very clean Defile. So I don't know if Pathra has another game plan in mind for when it comes to dealing with the Spellstones, or...
I mean, she does still have another Ankle Biter. She also can accomplish the same thing with Mortal Coil plus another 1 health minion.
That is true.
As well as Blood Mage plus Defile, dealing 2 and then 1. So those are all viable options. And then having Godfrey for potentially the other Spellstone. Although iOrchestrate seems content to get these secrets down early without having Spellstone in hand.
I'm very confused by the decision to not have tracking on 3.
Tracking on 3 prior to playing the secret, yeah. Kind of why I thought this hand was okay.
Yeah, the tracking was what tied the hand together, really.
Yeah, I agree. So Patra actually manages to get her ankle biter back.
Yeah.
Due to the order that the secrets were played, manages to bring
She
it
knew
back
it all
into her
along.
hand at 4. Yeah, I mean, it's very possible.
And this hand just doesn't look very good for iOrchestrate. Deadly Shot is
Deadly
pretty
Shot,
good in this
yep.
position.
This is one of the only situations where you're going to get much value out of that card. Turn off the life gain, get through what is pretty much the most threatening minion in the deck. I'm just a little worried that her life is quite high for this stage. I mean, iOrchestrate's only managed to get 5 damage in. I
Yeah,
guess
and
6 and 1 was healed back, but largely this seems like it's going to come down to how much pressure this to my side can push out here.
yeah, I just think iOrchestrate has gone for quite a passive game plan here. Like keeping the secret plan, not using the tracking to aggressively look for things like Animal Companion or Spellstone, and she's just not really got the pressure going, which is what she really needed to do, because Pathra's had quite a lot of luxury in this game to just kind of sit back, draw cards, and be quite comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can ankle biter your own acolyte for card draw, now's the time to do so.
You're pretty happy with yourself.
Fly through this deck in the other games under much more pressure than this. So I'm a little worried for iOrchestrate going forward that she hasn't been able to put much pressure out. At the same time, you know, there's still a lot of stats coming on the board here potentially, and a Huffer pushes 5. Unfortunately, no Misha means that at the very least this Mortal Coil is going to be able to get in there in conjunction with the Acolyte. Maybe better with the Ankle Biter, drawing an extra card by bumping the Leok. Patra's got a lot more options to draw. 5 damage is nice, but I don't know if it's enough.
Still
Importantly though, no
needs.
Spellstones in hand for Patra, so her
Yeah,
life gain is actually not that substantial.
yeah,
Just 1 point off the extra Ankle Biter proc, as well as a potential 4 damage off of that Dark Pact, which she could proc onto Galvanizer, since she already has the Mecha Theme, which is, I think, probably the ideal way of gaining life in this deck. Through Dark Pact is just like a
I think the Dark Pact's
superfluous
for
Galvanizer.
particularly the Voodoo Doll,
Yeah,
just as a way of guaranteeing you can hit that on something. But like you
she
said,
doesn't seem to even be under enough pressure to have to gain life yet.
oh no, I don't think there's any worry about it, especially with the Voodoo Doll in hand. If something like a Misha were to come off Animal Companion, watch it happens right now. No, just another Leok.
Another Leok. iOrchestrate really struggling to put pressure down here. And
Yeah.
I think the maximum amount of damage output in a single turn, assuming no cards are generated from outside of the game here, through any of the random generation, is 15, which would be double kill command plus Huffer plus Candle Shot. So with 4 cards, that is, I
Very
think, the
unlikely.
most Patra has to worry about.
Yeah.
We do see double kill command, so potentially just an Animal Companion away from a whole pile of damage. But Patra
Yeah.
is managing to develop taunts in the way of this. Another Corpse Taker coming out, which Zilliax hasn't been drawn, so this is still going to have lifesteal as well.
As well as Taunt and Divine Shield.
Spellstone. Yeah, this is quickly looking to be Patra stabilizing. 14 cards. She hasn't drawn as much as previous games though at this stage. Not a whole ton of cycle, but she has ample time to get some life taps, and she has enough health to do so as well, I think.
Yeah, Pathra is just looking very comfortable. There is that Animal Companion you were talking about. We could see something like Animal Companion, Kill Command on the... There's the Huffer as well. Kill Command on the... Dark Reaper? Oh no.
Interestingly, opting to pop Hunter's Mark to save the kill commands for extra damage later. I'd like to see a hero power weaved in.
Yep.
Goes for it as well. Though suddenly, Pathra under a lot of pressure as well. She does have Spellstone, as well as Blood Mage surviving.
And that Mortal Coil pickup with the Blood Mage Thalnos still there is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And I believe Pathra knows that this is not a freezing trap, and I think we'll just never go face for the duration of the rest of this game.
Right. No need to.
I think I'd like to see the Spellstone come down here, alongside the Wax Elemental and a Life Tap.
I feel like if Pathra doesn't tap, she has the luxury of playing Corpse Taker and not dying, which potentially enables her to power the Spellstone up next turn while also having a taunt. And I feel like it's a safe enough play, but I'm not sure how much pressure she feels like she's under.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to see... I would have liked to see the Spellstone with a Life Tap, just because Patra's now at a potentially dead life total.
Right.
If there were to be a beast, then double kill Command Hero Power would be lethal.
I think it's impossible for iOrchestrate to produce a beast in this context.
I believe so, but...
especially with the mana availability that she would have. However...
This is actually a really good pickup, allowing her to deal with the Corpse Taker without it getting any healing. Wait, is the kill command being used on the Corpse Taker?
Doesn't
it is
look
not.
Like it.
That surprises me.
Yeah. A little bit.
Because you are holding on to 5 damage, or potentially 5 when your opponent is likely to heal for at least 3, possibly 6.
She perhaps correctly reads that this will only get to ever deal 3, because her weapon swing will come back in and finishes off next turn. I think she actually does end up getting more damage in the long run by saving this.
Potentially.
But it's very close. And, of course, the potential for something to go wrong is always there. In this case, I don't know what it would be. There's no minion healing in Patra's deck, but it may just be a calculated risk. I think it checks out.
Yeah. Having thought about it some more, I
Spell's
think
up for
you are
7
right.
now.
Yep, back up to
Another 3
18.
coming in off the swing. So this 3-1 won't heal again when the Kindle Shot comes back in. However, iOrchestrate needs a beast to get these kill commands in for 5 apiece. Other than that is simply rolling hero powers turn after a turn. And we might find ourselves in a position where Deathstalker Rexar is mandatory.
I think Deathstalker Rexar is absolutely mandatory, and you're really good at that, Teebs. Saying a card, and then just next card off the top, it is right there.
It's gotta stay interesting.
Bittertide Hydra, let's go.
Here we go.
Bittertide Hydra with Lifesteal and Rush. Or with Stealth.
Stealth is an interesting pickup potentially because it turns off the Voodoo Doll option. Lifesteal Rush.
So we see a Lifesteal Rush Shimmering Courser, I believe it's called. I am really interested by the decision to not take the Hydra.
Right, Hydra with Stealth would have been an 8 mana minion.
It would have been an 8 mana 10/10. With Stealth. There is, of course, a Wax Elemental, but you would be able to Wax Element, ping the Wax Elemental, as I believe that's the last taunt. No, there would still be 2, so I'm not sure.
And
I would have liked to go for the Hydra
once
anyway.
Again, Pathra, between when we last brought up that she was at 14 cards, is now at 5 cards.
Yeah, it is absolutely insane, the rapidity with which this deck can cycle.
It seems like she's just taking a pile of her deck and putting it in her sleeve or something. Absolutely mind-blowing how these cards disappear. But here we are, Pathra, 5 cards left in deck, remarkably similar position to the last game. Simply needs to drop
There is the Cataclysm. Solarium can now be played.
Solarium online. Minion already at 8.
Of course, if you can play Solarium with Galvanizer still in the deck, because if you do draw it, you can just play it instantly.
You can play it. Yeah, but both of the spells have to be in hand. Otherwise, it's a pretty large risk. Gets the Spellstone. which will gain her some amount of life.
But
Explosive
can't be
cap
played on the
position
Shimmering
can't-
Corpser.
Yeah,
Can't.
it looks like her own Galvanizer is the most likely target for this.
Yeah.
Or perhaps a Glacial Shard, freezing the Courser.
Yeah, I think
And
just
then
freezing it
sacrificing
is
Glacial
the
Shard.
safest course of action.
But I think regardless, she's going to want to weave a tap in here. Though
yeah.
she doesn't need to. She got down to one card. She's
No,
gonna
but
draw that at the start of her turn.
Of course, she has already played both Galvanizers. I think I missed one happening at some point. Yes,
Yeah,
so
I
long.
did as well.
She
So
does
that's
not
it.
need to life tap.
Doesn't need to tap.
Alright, next turn, it's going to be it. And Teebs, Megathune Warlock reverse sweep.
Wild.
Didn't see that coming. There's the Spellstone. It's a little bit late, though.
It's too late. I think this Zombies is not useful in any way, and I think a large miracle would be needed. Interested to see what would have happened if the Bittertide Hydra with Stealth as a 10-10 that could not be answered by Voodoo Doll. Had that been the pick where this game might have ended up. But, yeah,
Now-
Pathra, the Magician, disappeared her deck, found the combo,
Just
and
all
completes
the
the reverse
way.
sweep.
I
Very impressive stuff.
am mighty impressed with not just Patra's play with this deck, but also just this deck in general. It seemed
Right.
very powerful.
I have to agree. On all counts. I mean, she played very well, and this deck won favorables, unfavorables, matchups we still aren't even sure how they are.
I think we've got to be honest and say that we're not sure on any of these matchups.
I feel pretty confident saying that Odd Rogue is favored.
I'm genuinely not sure. I think Megathune Warlock actually has a lot of tools which deal with what Odd Rogue can do. Odd Rogue no longer has the kind of cheese-it play of one drop into one drop Cold Blood, which was kind of their best play, and I think just without that, it's unproven as to whether the deck is still just good enough. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'd give the edge to Megathune Warlock in that, but we'll have to wait and see what some stats say about it once there's actually enough to have a gander at them. But congrats to
Especially
Pathra.
with this wild lineup of techs, just so well suited for the aggro matchups.
Yeah.
And she still managed to get there against the slower, more value-oriented decks like Q-Block. So,
Abs-
congratulations to Pathra. Takes the reverse sweep. Wins 3-2 versus iOrchestrate, and that puts her into day 2 undefeated, right? That was her second
Yep.
match of the day?
Absolutely. Patra goes through to the second match undefeated, where she's going to play against the winner of you and Future Shock. But of course, iOrchestrate is not out. She goes down to play against Slissa, who... Just a little update on what's been happening in the lower bracket. Slissa, in her match, she beat Hydralisk 3-1. So Hydralisk has been knocked out. Slissa is going to play against iOrchestrate offstream. And then in the other end of the lower bracket, Dragon Rider was swept by Kara Cute 3-0. So Kara Cute is going to play against the loser of yourself and Future Shock. So a lot of people still got plenty to play for. And
Yep.
Teebs, thank you for joining me on the Caster's deck.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Hope you enjoyed yourself, and it's left you feeling fresh and revitalized for your game. And I'm going to let you go off to prepare for that while I get the stream ready. And we're going to go for a quick break, everyone. So stick with us. We'll be about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll be right back with our final match of the day.
I'll be back on the other side of the table.
Look forward to it. All right.
Thanks
Ciao.
for having me. Take care, everyone.
Step the game up.